Hello, and thank you for joining us as we recount the 2023 Bike for Brain Health ride. We had a lot of fun on this ride, and we're so happy that we can share some of that with you. On June 4th, I, Gabriel J., took part in the Bike for Brain Health charity ride, choosing to tackle a 75-kilometer route along both the Gardner and the Don Valley Parkway, a scale that, to me at the time, seemed cross-continental in length. This event was being put on by Mattamy Homes, benefiting the Baycrest Foundation. The Baycrest Foundation is dedicated to the research of brain health, specializing especially in dementia and Alzheimer's, and making sure that anybody at any age can have a proper, healthy brain. Personally, these two diseases have impacted the people who I love, with my late grandma suffering from a very brutal form of Alzheimer's known as FTD, and my yaya, who is currently battling dementia. I was very happy to do this ride for them, as well as raise some funds that will help the Baycrest Foundation in their research. So without any more to do, let's go discuss that great cross-Canadian trek. The event contains two major parts within it. The first part being the 75-kilometer time trial. Now, this is the same 75-kilometer route that the regular riders would take. However, it's under time scrutiny. It's a competition. The fastest time wins, and the riders who are doing this have to keep up an average above 25 kilometers an hour. So this is a serious competition with very high standards to it. The second part, which luckily is a lot more relaxed, is the 25, 50, and 75-kilometer free ride. This is where all of the other riders will be riding along the Gardner and the Don Valley Parkway. Those who have chosen to do the longest route will take an extra lap, and those who have done the shorter route will just continue back towards the Gardner and back into downtown towards the Expedition Center. No matter the distance, all of the non-timed riders depart and share the road at the same time. Each of these riders, including the timed ones, have to raise a certain amount of funds that is set at a very reasonable limit to participate in the event. All of the non-timed riders depart and share the road at the same time. As well, all of the riders who are participating, including the timed riders, have to raise a minimum amount of funds that is reasonably set by the founders. The event starts at Exhibition Place. All the riders are rallied through the start point. There's some MCs there, as well as a nice band who kept everyone nice and entertained.
All right, good morning, everybody. Don't forget to thank the people in blue, our volunteers on board today. Maybe you 6 o'clock this morning, cheering on the riders on route. What enthusiasm is that? And our timed riders are coming in. So people have been out since 6 this morning, and our timed riders are coming in.
We have just started, we've gone on our way. We have left Exhibition Place and we're getting rolling. We're off to a great start. I forgot to resume my Strava. Anyways, it's back now. From there, we continue on to the on-ramp of the Gardner, and here we were let out in heats as not to clog up the entire roadway. Although, if you're familiar with the Gardner, that's something that the Gardner is very familiar with.
clocking those highway miles on the DVP. Actually, no, sorry, we're on the Gardner Expressway. Not a real Torontonian. We're on the Gardner, we riding.
The first bout of riding was very smooth sailing, with people finding their pace and enjoying the views. It was quite magnificent, honestly, to be on the Gardner, which is an elevated highway, for those of you who don't know, and being able to look out to your right and sort of see the lake shore through all of the buildings. You got these quick little glimpses of it, like watching a very old-time cinema reel at like 8 frames per second, and you can see the shutter moving throughout, and you just get this very nice, majestic view of the lake shore. Although small, narrow views of it. Still nice. It was hard to try and write this script without going into any history of the Don Valley Parkway, so I feel I might as well update you about something. The Gardner has a storied and controversial past, intertwined with Toronto's growing addiction to automobiles. In the early 1950s, Toronto city planners were looking for a cheap and efficient way to ferry in the sheeple who lived in the pyramid scheme suburbs of the city back into the heart of it, where they worked. So they decided, as many city planners at the time, that the best way to do this would be to bulldoze minority black and brown communities and put up a great big asphalt bridge. Now they also took advantage of Hurricane Hazel in 1954, which did some of the demolition work for them and helped them navigate some bad press. This time of scheming birthed them the Gardner and Don Valley Expressways. The only 2 expressways to blemish Toronto, as the other plans were successfully protested by those who actually live in the city and could recognize the harm that it was doing. With all that being said, the conditions on the Gardner were mediocrely optimal. The Gardner is infamous for being laden with potholes and debris. The only advantage being that on a bike, you can navigate those somewhat easier. But it did not go without hitting a few of them. When my eyes weren't so focused on the dangerous ground below me, I was able to glance up and actually enjoy the view of the city that was around me. From the CN Tower to the Sky Dome to the glimpses of the lake shore, you really did get a sense that you were being transported through this city, seeing all of its storied accomplishments. Coming off the Gardner was this very nice steep descent. This was probably the fastest speed of the day, clocking at 51.9 kilometers an hour on Strava. This was nice to savor at the start, but it would also mean a very steep climb on the return home, a worry that had not yet come into my mind. After this decline was when you could really determine the pace that other riders were setting. I was sticking to the left of the road as I was moving faster than the rest of the general pack, but as you can see, there are some hardcore riders here who are just crushing it, going much faster than I can. There were a couple of instances where I did try to put in an effort and keep up with these riders, but I was quickly finding out that this amount of energy expulsion would not be sustainable throughout the rest of the ride. It was at this point that I really had to tell myself that I need to take things at my own pace and take it easy. While riding, the usual distance that I cover for my commute from home to school is roughly 20 kilometers. Never much more than that in one instance. So a ride at this scale, being almost 3 times what I usually do, you can see why that would be so daunting. And honestly, at the beginning of this, I should have taken it more conservatively. I decided that I should ride at my normal commuting speed and really took advantage of all of the ascents that were coming my way. You can see other riders really smash it down these ascents, pedaling all out in their highest gear. But for me, that's just something I'm not as good at without getting bucked from the saddle. All that being said though, I am maximizing the amount of speed that I can get in coasting through. I was also taking advantage of the fact that no one here would really judge me for super descending, so... Biking on the DVP was quite interesting, as I've had the privilege of walking or hiking some of the trails beside it. On those trails, there's a sense of peace and quiet where nature resides in its humble abode. It populates its space with trees and bush and water and the sound of a big-ass highway, just meters away, that constantly is congested and filled with a bunch of cars slaughtering my serenity. But anyhow, I could see those pass from atop the DVP, and I could see how small they seemed beside the massive slab of asphalt. They looked like such an afterthought, a happy coincidence that no one would want to live so close to the highway, and so something must be done with this land. The good thing about the DVP is that it follows the Don Valley River, whose gentle curves lend to an interesting and enjoyable ride. There's nothing like a straight, endless line of highway to make you zone out and wish to kiss the pavement, so I was glad for these subtle bends and curves that were guided into this road. cars that we would go. We're exiting at the York Mills exit off the DVP and then making a little loop around. Here we take the off-ramp, go through the underpass, over, up, and onto the other side of the DVP. Coming up from here was the first rest area, and what I hoped was the midway point of the ride. I hopped off my bike to give it a little wander around, but it was quite crowded here, so I decided heading back onto the road was probably the best bet for me. Each of these rest stops has a little food area, water refill station, as well as a mechanic spot. There's also a first aid station, of course, as well as a couple of course marshals who are there to provide first aid on the road.
Wow, we're still going. Good shit.
I hopped back on my bike and it was due south for me. For the most part, we continued down the same stretch of highway just on the opposing side until we branched off from the DVP. From here, we took a nice turn through some offshoots of the highway that brought us around the Bloor Castle Frank area. This section was a nice variety of off and on ramps to give us a nice change of pace as well as some livelier climbs.
There we go. All right, hopping back on, we're at the halfway point. Got the rest of it to go and it's all good.
There was a nice mix of riders in attendance. You had everyone from the very relaxed weekend whimsy to the club cyclists. There were a lot of folks who showed up simply because there was such a safe, uninterrupted opportunity to ride with a large group. There were a lot of families who were out doing this together, either with a come-along for their children or if their children on their own bikes. We're talking toddler triathletes with calves the size of tree trunks. Okay, maybe not to that degree, but these were kids who were seriously holding their own. The majority of the sportive riders who were riding at a fast pace were in the 20 to 30-year-old range, but there was still very good communication going on as to how passing and overtaking should take place.
lens distortion does not do me any favors.
This section here between the ramps was enjoyable, but could have been a bit sketchy depending on who you rode it with. If they were not capable of giving you the required space that you needed to overtake, this narrow section could have led to accidents. Honestly though, this was really the only section throughout the entire day that gave me any sort of worry about the other people who I was around. And altogether, I felt very safe with this community. And from there, it was just a nice straightaway down to this very, very significant fork in the road. Very, very significant fork in the road.